What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to Around the NSL. Well, I know it's been a while, and let me start with a very sincere apology. Let's be honest, very sincere apology for being away. Um, Life took a few very unexpected turns, and I kind of got lost somewhere in that process. It was like a torrential downpour, and maybe someday I'll be able to describe the details. Someday when I am able to process it. But for now, I want to recognize the fact that I let y'all down. My fellow NSL fans, I'm sorry. The league deserves better, and so we're back. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do this better. We're gonna cover the league and the way it deserves and the way y'all deserve and we all deserve. And this time, I promise, we're in it for the long run. We're going to cover the weekly action like we did. And also, we're going to do a lot more. We're going to do a lot more to do justice to an amazing first season that's unfolding as we speak. I've been following the league as even though I've not been around, I still love the league. I've been following it. So I guess I'm just coming back to what I love. So I hope you all will continue to support and follow along. So yeah, let's get around the NSL. Once again, let's go. What is happening, everyone? Welcome back to Around the NSL. It was week 17 now in the books, and it was a super Saturday. I mean, not just because all 6 teams played on the same day, but a lot of interesting and surprising results because Ottawa Rapid lost at home against Calgary Wild, 1-0. Tides got a very surprising draw, really surprising draw, fought hard against Vancouver Rise. And Montreal Roses lost at home against AFC Toronto, who, by the way, I think are now going to tell the league that, hey, we are the team to beat. So bring it on. All right, let's get to it. All right, so let's talk about the quote-unquote match of the week, which was Montreal Roses facing off against AFC Toronto at home. Now, these obviously are 2 teams that are at the top of the league and the closest to each other in terms of skill and just results. And that's very evident in their head-to-head. I mean, they've played 3 games. They had played 3 games before this, and it was a toss-up. Roses had won that first inaugural NSL game 1-0, and then the next one, Toronto takes it 2-0, and then Roses take the third one 2-1. So it was always a very even fixture. But to give it more context, if you look at the momentum that the 2 teams were coming in with, the Roses drew away to Tides last week, 1-1. I think it was a disappointment for them. Even though they were away to Tides, and they really should have won that game. They conceded to Tides in the second half and didn't play well defensively, whereas Toronto didn't really make those mistakes and won away against Calgary 2-1. So Toronto was in a better form. Roses had a point to prove. So yeah, it was going to be a real fun game to watch. It was in Montreal. And now Montreal didn't make any changes. They were pretty happy with their formation. They've been very consistent with their formations. So they didn't make any changes. But Toronto did make some changes. Some of them forced because Sophia Manor was out with illness, so Sierra Cotillard came in for her. Whereas in defense, they once again been playing around a little bit on defense here with Croy Soto, Castro, and so on. So in this case, Castro goes out, Kayla Hansen comes in, Soto keeps her place. Whereas the other big change was Okoronkwo comes back after missing 4 games because she was away on international duty, and she comes back and plays for Emma Rowe. Now, starting minutes, both teams, I think it started very cagey. They both knew the occasion. They both knew the stakes, especially Montreal. They really wanted to get, if they had won, they would be joined top of the table with Toronto, but because they had a game in hand, they would have gone up and led the league. So they knew the stakes, and both teams were very hesitant to start out with high pressing. They weren't pressing high; they were very careful, and instead kept pressing in the midfield to be a little bit careful. Both had some very good combination plays to start out the game. I think special mention to Strategakis. She's come into this team and really made a big difference in that midfield. Okoronkwo had some good looks initially, and those three, Strategakis, Okoronkwo, and Hunter, all three were combining pretty well. Meanwhile, on the other side, the usual suspects, Bilbo, Abdu, and Whitaker were combining really well and starting off. But I think the first few minutes you would see that the combinations were there, but it's just that final pass wasn't there. They were happy to drop back. As I mentioned, they weren't pressing high, either teams. They're happy to sit back a little bit, invite the pressure, and then step up to the ball and, cut it off. They were both very comfortable in making tackles. There were a few good chances because both teams were sitting back. Both teams were giving set pieces. Both teams were conceding some shots from distance. But I would say overall, Montreal had the better of the two presses in that early going in the midfield. And especially, I would say, Claire Moniard, who's been now a little bit more consistently playing up top, has been a very good presence and was making some good runs behind the back three of Toronto. Now, against the run of play, though, because as I said, Montreal was having the better of the two, was playing the better of the two, but against the run of play, Toronto have a really good counter from a Montreal corner. So Montreal takes a corner, but is not successful, gets cleared off, and then Toronto counters really effectively. The ball goes to Strategakis, who makes a very insightful pass through to Small. I would say here, though, that Montreal defense should have done a lot better on that. Didn't cut that pass through. Makes it to Nikayla Small. Nikayla Small, by the way, amazing what she does. She almost always drops back and plays in that with that back three of Toronto, even though she is the winger and is playing midfield. But then again, you also find her up top somehow. Like she just teleports and comes up top. Anyways, so she makes a big run off that corner into the Montreal half. Strategakis finds her and then gets one-on-one with Karpenko and just finishes it very coolly. Nothing Karpenko could have really done, to be honest. And that's Toronto 1-0, just like that. And big shout out to Karpenko. Oh, sorry. Well, not a big shout out to Karpenko, obviously. Big shout out to Nikayla Small, and a great shout out to Strategakis for creating that goal. And with that, I think after that goal, Toronto was really buoyed by that, and they started actually pressing with more intent, because before, as I mentioned, both teams were a little cagey. Now Toronto, with that lead, they were willing to press more, and they keep pushing Roses back more and start creating chances more. So Toronto actually grows into the game after the goal, whereas Montreal were doing well before Toronto score from that absolute counter, right? So because Toronto starts pushing more, Montreal started losing shape more. They were trying to go after that goal, but they were completely losing their shape. And what this means is they're not able to break the press from Toronto. They lose the ball, and one such play where they lose the ball, Toronto plays direct back to the Montreal half. Hunter gets on the ball in space in the Roses defense, and then she's not even actually too far into Montreal's half. It's maybe like 30 yards, 40 yards maybe, and she just takes an absolute screamer, catches Karpenko off the line, and just like that, Toronto goes 2-0 up. Absolutely wonderful goal from Kaylee Hunter. Just immaculate finishing. Karpenko probably would have been disappointed with the way she was positioned, but I don't think she really thought it was going to go in. But I would say, though, a big part of it, of the goal was also that Roses lost the defensive shape, as I mentioned, because of the press. And primarily they lost that shape on the right-hand side with Whitaker trying to go too high and go after that goal. Anyways, with that, Toronto now starts sitting back, which I think they do that a lot in most games, which I think is one of the things they should improve on going forward, maybe into the playoffs. If they keep doing that, it can cost them more, as it does here too, because they start sitting back with Nikela Small and Barnett dropping deeper and playing a back five, which is what they usually do, and they just keep clearing the ball without any intent to build up from the back. And this is what leads to Roses coming back, because one of these plays where they absorb all that Montreal pressure leads to a corner for the Roses, and from the corner, Stephanie Hill makes a run from outside the box, completely unmarked. No one picks her up and just places it into the net. And Roses come back 1-2 just before the end of the half. And I think that's where really Toronto really missed the trick there. They really should have finished the half strong. They didn't. Montreal takes advantage of that, and we go into the half 1-2. Very exciting half, I would say. Very well played from both teams. Starts a little cagey, opens up with a completely against the run of the play goal, and then it just becomes back and forth a little bit. Second half, Roses come out with a lot more higher pressing. They realized that they were sitting too deep, and they decide, okay, that's enough. Let's just press higher, and that starts creating chances. Abdu has a couple of really good chances right away, and overall, I think Montreal is pressing, also breaking the press well and pressing back at the same time for the first 15 minutes or so. But then they start subbing, and the subs really kind of disrupt the flow of how Montreal is able to press and create chances. For example, Roses changed to a 4-2-3-1 as Abdu becomes the sole striker, and Sauvé, Paquin, and Boychuk play the three behind her. Sauvé and Bochuk, as always, are able to connect very well with the defense and the wings. But again, I think that those subs really make kind of a bit of a disruption to the flow that Montreal has as they start out. Meanwhile, Toronto kind of goes into the half again, just sitting into that 5-3-2 shape. I would say, though, like the intent kind of goes missing completely from Toronto. Maybe for good reasons. I mean, they know how to defend. They back their defense, but I think it could start hurting them once they go into much more business end of the season, and these things can have a way to come back to haunt you. But yeah, I mean, Roses did try to do that. I mean, they were their subs. They really try to play faster and to try to shake that shape of Toronto in their 5-3-2, but we're not able to do much damage this time. So overall, in the second half, Roses do a lot more to break the press. They win tackles, and they do play through the lines. I do think the Roses were a lot better in the second half, but just Toronto were very good in their defensive shape. They invited the pressure and were able to deal with that. I would say the Roses were a little too rushed. They need to work on that as they go into the second half of the season, and they want to have a chance to push Toronto and really stake a claim for that championship. Roses need to learn how to be not rushed and be more measured in the final half and be able to break such defensive shapes more effectively. But they weren't. And with that, I think that Toronto is easily able to claim the top spot in the league, at least for now, and claim the title of the team to beat. All right, so let's start with the game that I really thought was the biggest upset of the week, which was Ottawa Rapid hosting Calgary Wild. It's important to note that coming into the game, Rapid were doing really well. I mean, they were if they had got a win from this game, they would have gone up into the second place, considering Montreal lost in the other game before them. And on the other side, Calgary Wild had lost 6 out of their last 7 and hadn't scored in almost a month. So you would have thought that Rapid would be the favorite here, and they really were going into the game. Rapid were the favorite to win this game. And so to just do a recap where they were coming from, Rapid had stolen a 3-3 draw the last minute away to the Rise. So that kind of showed a little bit of some chink in the armor for the Rapid. Very, very close fight there last week for them. So they were coming in a little bit, I would say, a little bit tired, even though they had a full week rest. Calgary Wild, meanwhile, as I mentioned, have been on a losing streak here. They lost to AFC Toronto 1-2 at home after a really frenetic first half of goals. So both teams kind of coming off of some disappointments there. In terms of head-to-head, they had played 3 times. The first one was a draw, 0-0 draw. The second one was a 3-1 to Rapid, and the third one was also a 3-goal fest for Rapid. So Rapid has been wiping the floor with Calgary Wild every time they've seen each other, especially Pridham, who's had some really good goals and been in great form against the Wild. So Rapid had a chance to go up to the table, as I mentioned, if they had won. So they made some changes to kind of go in hard. Adamek came in at right back. Fridland actually came in for Forbes. Forbes and Fridland have been switching on and off in that front 3 position alongside Pridham and Downing. No changes for the Wild, surprisingly, very interestingly. So Wild has kind of found some good stability, I would say, in the recent weeks, even though they've been struggling up top. Catherine Harvey and Bauckham continue to start up top. So the formations were very similar to what the Wild has been playing in the recent past. So in terms of early going, so we started off, Rapid was kind of finding a rhythm. They were happy to build up, while Wild was going more direct. They were trying to go direct to the players up top, specifically Bauckham, trying to use her presence in the box. Now, as always, Maggie Doherty Howard was a very big presence early on for Calgary Wild because they were going direct. Maggie Doherty Howard has a tendency to play alongside top 3, like Bauckham, Thurton, and Harvey. So she had a great chance starting off right away from a direct ball from who else? Michaela Moore. So a lot of the same from Wild again. They're good with set pieces. They're good with those direct balls. So they started off like that. Lots of space opened up for the Rapid because of this kind of formation, because Maggie Doherty Howard and Janiyah Robertson for Calgary Wild were being too high for those direct balls, and that opened up a lot of space for the Rapid midfielders, specifically Minna Lee and also Desiree Scott to some extent. What the Rapid do really well is play their fullbacks a lot higher. So Adamek and Chu often tend to help out the midfield quite a bit, and that gives them a lot of number advantage in the midfield. So that's how they started. Rapid was on the front foot. Wild, though they're happy to sit back, but they were also trying to go direct whenever they can. Now, as it settled, Wild surprisingly started having better pressing, which I found very interesting, because considering you would think the Ottawa Rapid being the favorites here, you would think they would have more control of the game, but instead Calgary Wild came out with intent. They had a lot better pressing strategy, and which kind of pushed the Ottawa Rapid deeper. Now, one thing that I noticed between the two teams were they had a lot of similarities. For example, up top, Bauckham for Calgary Wild and DB Pridham for Ottawa Rapid both play deep number 9s. They like coming deep gathering the ball and letting the players behind them run past them. Maybe, let's say, if it's Serta Thurton in the case of Calgary Wild, or let's say for Rapid, Pridham can let Stella Downing and Friedland run past her and create plays. So they're both very similar in that sense. And they also have two really good playmakers, both teams, like Minna Lee for Ottawa Rapid can run past Pridham and combine with her and is a very potent passer. And the same thing goes with Maggie Doherty Howard, as we mentioned, for Calgary Wild. So that pattern kept playing out quite a bit in that first 20 to 30 minutes. Both teams were relying upon their deep number nines to kind of hold the play up and let the wingers run past them. And then that's actually how one of the chances came about. One of the best chances came about, and that was for Ottawa Rapid, for DB Pridham, because there was a poor defensive tackle for Rolsema. The ball had been played up, as I mentioned, to the Ottawa Rapid front three, and it actually wasn't as dangerous as it could have been, but Rolsema tried to step in and missed the ball, completely missed the tackle, let Pridham on one-on-one. But it was thankfully cleared off the line by Ali Green. So that was a scare for the Wild very early on. It was like, I think, the 28th minute or so. So it was a wake-up call for the Wild to say, hey, you got to be much more switched on when DB Pridham's around. She is the leading goal scorer of the league. And through that process, I would say more and more Rapid grew into the game as the half went on. You had, as I mentioned, the fullbacks started providing more and more width and started causing issues for the Wild. The reason this became an issue for the Wild is more because Janai Robertson and Maggie Doherty Howard for Calgary Wild are always usually tucked into the midfield. So the Calgary Wild midfield is a very compact midfield. They don't kind of spread out. It's not, even though it looks like a 4-3-3, Savitsky is playing the holding mid, and Janai Robertson and Maggie Doherty Howard are playing a two in front of Savitsky, and those two are not super wide. They're very tucked in. And what that means is if the opposing team has good fullbacks who can push up, that can cause a lot of problems. And so that's what Rapid was doing. Rapid was playing Adamek and Chu high up, and that would mean that Wild were outnumbered in the midfield, and it would lead to a lot of good chances. One of them, I can remember Minna Lee having a really good chance around the end of the first half. And in general, I would say that first half was categorized by possession being strongly even, because of the similarities, as I mentioned, between the two teams, with Calgary starting strong and then Rapid coming back, and Rapid playing more of a wing-based approach. But for the most part, I think it was a stalemate because of the similarities in the team structure. We go into the second half. Wild makes some substitutes, and this is important. Maddie Wilson comes in for Janai Robertson, and she's going to play an important role later on, as you'll see. Whereas the Rapid makes some interesting subs as well. Florence Belzile comes in for Friedland up top on the right wing. Holland comes in for Desiree Scott, which was an interesting change, I thought, because she stepped into the center back position. She's always known to be playing the center back, which meant that Olivia Scott, or Liv Scott, who was playing in her unnatural position of center back, she usually plays full back, like right back or center defensive mid. So Liv Scott was then able to go into her natural position, which was center defensive mid, where Desiree Scott was playing, and Holland pulled into center back. Whereas Downing, this helped Downing kind of switch positions on the wings as well, because Friedland had been substituted with Belzile. So they made Rapid kind of changed up a little bit to give more fresh legs and push on a little bit more, because they really thought that they had the momentum going in after that first half of dominance, especially on the wings. So they wanted to use Downing more, they wanted to use Adamek more, and these changes would help them do that. And that it really did. Downing's switch helped her combine with Adamek and be quite dangerous on that right flank. They were creating a few really interesting chances. And really, I think what they were trying to do on that right flank of the Ottawa Rapid was to combine together, and they were trying to target Ali Green, who was really not getting a lot of help. Rapid saw that, and they were trying to double up on that right flank and create chances, which they did. And this kept happening until Stella Downing got replaced by Mel Forbes, and then Rapid also switched a little bit in their attack, and they went more, they started putting numbers more in attack. They went to a 4-2-4 with Min Ali joining the attack with already Bill Zeal up there, Pridham up there, and Forbes up there. So Rapid was really trying to go in for the kill. As this happened, against the run of play, 67th minute, this is where it completely, it was a little bit of a surprise. Against the run of play, Rapid make an unforced error trying to play from the back, and Liv Scott concedes a penalty on Maddie Wilson. As I was saying, Wilson, once she got in, she was very lively. She came in for Janai Robertson and really started combining well with Maggie Wardy Howard. And when she was starting to put pressure, Liv Scott conceded that penalty, which I think was kind of an unforced error. But either way, Wilson gets that penalty. Maggie Doherty Howard steps up, takes it, and man, what a great save by Dagenet in goal. Amazing reflexes off the line at the right time. She dives to her right and makes a really good save. So that could have been a Wild going up right there, 1-0, but it was quite amazing to see how Dagenet was able to adjust and make the save. Now, once this was done, this happened, I think this kind of switches on Rapid a little bit more. They were like, okay, we're home. We almost went 1-0 down. We got to get better here. And so they do get better. They start passing well. Chu and Adamek again start imposing themselves a lot more. And Chu actually sets up Pridham, but Bukovac actually comes down and closes her down. So there's some good chances that Rapid start creating around this time. Now, this is where a little bit more of the match starts changing, which is Calgary Wild start making some more subs. Now, Serta Thurton, who was quite active in the first half, but kind of goes quiet in the second, is replaced by Sarah O'Neill. And Ali Green is also taken out for Talia White. Now, Ali Green, as I mentioned, it made sense that she needed to be given a break. She was really being targeted by the Rapid, wingers. So they probably saw that and took her out. Talia White comes in. And at the same time, Rapid also makes some subs. Emilia Amano comes in for Olivia Scott, who was playing center defensive mid. So Amano comes into that key critical position. It's important to know that right around this time, we have a water break. And the water break happens, the changes happen. Right off the water break, Sarah O'Neill has come into the center defensive mid of Calgary Wild. That means Savitsky plays a little bit higher up for a little bit. Not for too long, as you'll see later. Savitsky plays a little higher up, gives more help to Doherty Howard, and there's some good combination play on the right flank with Grace Doherty and Maddie Wilson by Savitsky. Maddie Wilson gets the ball on the right flank, puts a really good ball in. Now, when that ball comes in, it was important to note that the other sub, part of all those subs that just happened, the other sub, Emily Amano, who came into the center defensive position for Rapid, is completely caught ball watching. She's still not yet into the pace of the game. She's still trying to adjust. And what that means is she loses the fact that Savitsky is making a run into the box to take the cross that Maddie Wilson puts in, and she's completely unmarked Savitsky, and she places it in. Easy goal, and Calgary go 1-up. And that really comes out, I would say, against a run of play. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that there was a break in the game. Rapid just switched off. The subs made a big difference. Rapid, when they look back on the game, they're going to they're going to rue that mistake. That was very much their own undoing. They really switched off after that break, and it cost them dearly. And from there on, Wild then switched to a bit of a 4-4-2. They drop back a little bit more. Maggie Doherty-Howard stays up top with Bauckham, but Wilson and Gray start playing wing, and maybe sometimes Wilson would even drop back into a back five if needed. And so Wild start to sit a little deeper. As I mentioned, Sarah O'Neill and Savitsky start playing the double pivot, and Wilson starts playing a defensive five. Rapid on their side, they once again go back to targeting the flanks again with Adamek now, and as well as on the right side with Forbes. They create a few chances for Pridham. Actually, one of them, it's a really good cross by, I think it's Forbes, from the right-hand side. Again, on the right-hand side is where Rapid created most of their chances, and there was a really good cross that gave Pridham a very good chance, and it goes off the crossbar, and that was really the closest that Rapid ever came. And the match really ends with the last round of pressure that Rapid creates, but not to no avail. It was all just, throwing the kitchen sink at it at that point. Overall, Wild really was just better at taking chances. That's what it is. They didn't really create a lot, but they were very good at taking the chances. And to be honest, they would have been 2-0 up. And the goal came from a complete change in structure on the field for a brief moment, and a water break that completely switched off the Rapid. And so it was their own fault. So they would be very disappointed because of their momentary lack of focus, as well as not finishing their chances. So they'll rue break time. All right. Well, with that, I think let's go on and talk about the other kind of upset, not really an upset of the week, which was Halifax Tides and Vancouver Rise. Let's go. All right, so let's talk about the other upset of the week, which was Halifax Tides holding Vancouver Rise to a 0-0 draw. Now, this is an upset because even though the Tides were playing at home, just their history that they had with the Rise was abysmal, because in the previous 3 head-to-heads that these two teams had, Vancouver Rise had won the first game 1-0, second game 2-1, and the third game 6-0. They'd completely swept the floor with the Tides last time these two teams met in Halifax. And once again, they're meeting in Halifax, so it must not have been easy for the Tides. So considering all of that, the fact that Tides ended up drawing this game was quite an upset. It also makes sense coming into the week. Rise had conceded a 3-3 draw to the Rapid at home. That must have hurt. Tides, meanwhile, were buoyant because they fought back to get a 1-1 draw against the Roses. So Tides have been having some momentum here, and they were trying to, build on that. So though that said, Tides did make some changes. Sid Kennedy came in for Millie Clegg, and more surprisingly, Nakamura was benched, and they gave a NSL debut to Sofia Cedeno, which was very surprising, the fact that Nakamura was benched. Meanwhile, Vancouver Rise had more changes. McCaslin, which was expected, she came into the goal after a bit of an injury. Jessica Coward came in for Shannon Wooler at center back, partly because of injury, I think, for Wooler. And Yuka Okamoto came in for Jalen Wright on the left back position, which was a little bit of a surprise as well. Mariah Lee, meanwhile, came in up top for DeFilippo, who got benched. So I think Vancouver Rise are still trying to figure out their top 3. I mean, Holly Ward is a automatic pick. Pachersky is 2, but that other spot is still up for grabs, it seems. But anyways, early on, Tides kind of start a little bit compact out of possession, and they were compact, but they were willing to put numbers in, which meant that they had a lot of gaps between their midfield and defense, and that would cause them a lot of grief because they were leaving a lot of space for Quinn and Longhurst and Chang. Vancouver Rise, in turn, was playing an interesting back 3 formation when they had the ball, which meant that they were sending Yuka Okamoto, who was playing in place of Jalen Wright, quite a bit up on the left flank. Usually they do this with Jasmine Spencer on the right side. They would send Jasmine Spencer up on the right flank a lot, but this time Spencer stayed back and Okamoto went in. And what that meant was they were getting a lot of numbers in midfield. They were outnumbering Halifax Tides in the midfield, which I think usually what Vancouver Rise does in most games. Now, but when they didn't have the ball, what they would also do is Holly Ward would kind of drop back from the front three. So they were sitting back when they didn't have the ball. They were a little bit defensive, which was interesting, and that would invite a little bit of pressure. But over time, I think Vancouver Rise settled into the game. They were able to identify some gaps, especially with the Halifax Tides wingers, because the wingers were not tracking back at Amanda Allen, for example. And what that meant was Josie Longhurst would start to play quite wide. She would go all the way out, play just behind the space that Amanda Allen or the wingers were leaving behind for Halifax Tides, and she would start combining with Paczerski on that flank. Now, that was something in a nutshell, but in general, I think the overall feel of the half was Tides were struggling massively with the pressing that the Vancouver Rise usually do. And in this case, the Tides were losing their discipline. They couldn't make decisions easily enough. They weren't making quality passes. And they really should have gone more direct, I feel, because when they did, they were being more effective, reaching Tiffany Cameron up top, who I think is their best player right now, even though she is a recent addition to the team. They need to reach Tiffany Cameron a lot faster, a lot better, but because they were not going direct, she was not even in the game for the most part in the first half. So that really was something they missed. So in the first half, overall, Tides were pretty ineffective going forward, but very indisciplined, very, lacked quality in passes. But they were very good in defense. Like defensive shape-wise, they were very good. And that's what caused the Rise, in turn, to be not good in the final third. I would say the Vancouver Rise had a lot of possession. They had a lot of good plays, but what ended up happening was oftentimes they would get to the final third and then just completely lose the momentum because Tides had a very good shape. So that brings us into the second half. So second half, Longhurst gets taken out and DiFilippo comes in. So Rise kind of tweak it a little bit to make it more direct, more central instead of flank. So DiFilippo plays number 9 and Mariah Lee moves to the right and Paczerski drops into the midfield where Longhurst was playing. So what this means is Vancouver can continue to press high, but now their approach is a little bit more to use DiFilippo as the focal point and put balls in the box and put in crosses. Tides, meanwhile, actually started going direct, which was very good to see. They started putting long balls in, trying to find Cameron more, and they were getting more dangerous. Now, over time, with more subs and everything, Rise actually, the Vancouver Rise slowly started dropping their press, which gave Tides a little bit more space and a little bit more time on the ball in midfield, which I think was pretty helpful for them to gain confidence overall. And what that meant is over time, Tides actually started growing into the game. The crowd started really getting into the game and really started, opening up the game a lot more, because partly the Rise was dropping, as I mentioned, and the Tides were able to really press a little bit more. But what that meant was they were able to create breakaways. There were a few chances between like the 80th minute or so, like the last 10-15 minutes, Tides could have gone up by 3 goals. Like one of them where Sarah Miller takes a shot from distance and, McCaslin makes a save, but she can't collect it, and there's a rebound, and Millie Clegg just misses the rebound terribly. Again, another one where Daphne Blouin and Clegg miss another spill from McCaslin. McCaslin was having a pretty dicey game, I would say, in the second half. Had a couple of pretty egregious spills. And in both instances, Millie Clegg really fluffed the lines, for the lack of a better way to say it. And the last one, or the third one, was the most glaring, where Blouin creates something from the midfield. Daphne Blouin, again, kind of coming up out from a Vancouver Rise mistake in the midfield. She passes it to Miller, Sarah Miller, who plays in Millie Clegg wide open, and she misses it. And just completely misses it. Just puts it up over the crossbar. So that kind of sums up Tides and their problems all season. Good defense, but absolutely woeful finishing. I mean, they're not able to score. If they're not able to score from chances like that, it's gonna be hard. I mean, they're not able to match or deal with the physicality and the pressing that the Vancouver Rise have, and their only real threat is by going direct and finding maybe Tiffany Cameron, and that's not going to get you a lot of goals. And so when you do get it, you really have to score. Now, their defense was quite good. I have to give them credit. They maintained their shape. That's going to keep them in games, but you need more than that. Meanwhile, Vancouver had a lot of possession, but really lacked quality in the final third. They were able to press quite high, use the flanks like they always do, but I think they need a lot more incisive passing in the final third. I don't think there was enough service for DiFilippo, or Mariah Lee, again, wasn't that convincing. There was a lot left wanting about their crosses and the final passes. Pechersky, I would say, was the pick of the lot in their front three, but that's saying a lot. Holly Ward was missing for most of the game. So, yeah, I think there are lots to work on for the Rise and just lots of chances to rue for the Tides. All right, let's quickly look ahead of the games this week. Big week for Ottawa. And that's an understatement, to be honest, because they're going to have a doubleheader with the first game on Wednesday at 7 p.m. at TD Place. So they're playing at home, and they're hosting AFC Toronto. Big test. Big test. We'll see if they can rebound from the loss and get back on track. But Toronto is the team to beat, so it's going to be very tough. My heart says that it's going to be, I'm leaning towards Toronto taking it 2-1, but I'm going to be kind to Ottawa and say it's going to be a 1-1 draw. Let's hope so, because I want to have that, parity at the top of the table, let's say. But on the second game, I don't think I can be that kind, because Ottawa once again is playing the next game as well, because they're going to stop Montreal and to play Montreal on Saturday's early game at 2 p.m. So the first two games of the week are both Ottawa, which kind of is weird scheduling, let's just be honest. But yeah, so they're playing the next game as well. So this is going to be a tougher test because it's a short turnaround, and it's a very tough team in Montreal who's not going to take it easy. They know the stakes. So I would say Montreal takes the win 2-1. Saturday's later game, meanwhile, has Calgary Wild hosting Halifax Tides. Wild will look to build on their momentum, and after the win that they finally got after 8 games last week, Tides will be an interesting opportunity for them to continue that. But Tides in no manner are going to just be a pushover. I think their Tides are going to be encouraged by their draw against the Rise. It was a well-fought draw, so Tides are going to bring it. So I would say it's going to be even game, but I do have a feeling Calgary Wild are going to sneak in a set piece from somewhere and get a 1-0 win. So that's my prediction. And last but not the least, the last game is on Sunday, and this time Toronto again is playing. So Toronto is playing twice this week as well, and they're playing this time against the Rise, and they're hosting it at home. So because they're playing at home, it's going to be a good thing, but it's a tough test. Vancouver is a tough opponent, and it's the second game in a span of 4 days for AFC Toronto, so that's not going to be easy. Meanwhile, Rise are going to also try to bounce back from their disappointing draw against the Halifax Tides. So I think it's going to be a very close game, and I want to say it's going to be a draw, a 1-1 draw, let's say. Yeah. So with that, I think that wraps up for the week. It's going to be a very exciting week coming up. 4 games. So lots of action, lots of drama, I'm sure. Lots of changes in the table as well. But excited for it. I'm sure we're all going to have a great time. And I'm excited to come back and talk about it at the end of the week. So have a great week. Have fun watching the games. And be good, be kind, and be you.